All right, here we go, guys. Okay. So, all right, so let's start. First of all, Sandy, then let me get on. And before we get going, the CME person is on, right? Candace, what do we have today? Is it 11940 today is what I was going to guess? Candace, are you there? Maybe she's not on yet. We'll see soon.
It is not. It is 11942.
Or two.
I just sent the link out to everybody. 11942.
1942. Okay, good. All right, and Sandy, see if you have any reports from ACEP. But one of the things that I want you and Jim to talk about is that we did put a survey out per your request, which I think was regarding like how do you notify people that may have been exposed even pre-COVID. That was an OSHA issue that you were bringing up. So Jim, do we have any results yet on that? And Sandy, can you put the ask out again before that, before Jim gives an answer?
Yeah, so basically we were asked by OSHA exactly how we live up to the Ryan White law, especially in times of COVID. And the specific ask is, how do hospitals notify EMS providers and others that may have been exposed to a COVID patient? Scenario is you bring in a patient who turns out to be COVID positive, and how do you notify the EMS squads? So Jim?
I don't have the results yet. Stein, can you get Mark to push them across to me?
Yeah, we're basically looking at,
Yes.
your phone call, is it a fax, the real sort of nitty gritty, just how do you do it kind of thing.
I will have him push those through right now.
Okay, good. And then Sandy, did we ask in our survey, were you happy with what we put out, we rolled out?
I am not sure I saw the survey, so I'm delighted.
Got it. Okay, got it. All righty, got it.
Sandy,
Yeah, go ahead.
hey, Sandy, it's Veer. Hey, so we actually had a really big issue with this locally because a lot of our hospitals weren't willing to actually share it, even though they've shared infectious disease information with us previously. We ended up having to get direct access into Epic, which we had already had, to actually find the results ourselves. They weren't willing to pull the information and send it to us, despite a number of legal avenues that we attempted. So we've finally come to a resolution on it for the most part, but there are still some that are very, very slow about getting us the information out of the hospital.
Hey, Veer, can you drop me like a 2-liner on that, just so I have some backup, because I'll report that as well. Not the institutions, but the fact that there are institutions. I'm not going to hang people out to dry.
No, of course. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Sandy, this is John. We're still getting a lot of information as well that hospitals are not sharing this type of stuff.
Perfect. How much nicer can the world get?
All right, so anyways, just so you know, we did a poll. I guess we're just still gathering some of the data. Usually we're a lot faster about this, but we may have it and we'll see. So if you want to alert me, if someone gets some preliminary information, alert me. Otherwise, let's make sure we get it to you probably within the day. You have a deadline on this?
No, but they, it was one of the typical, well, this was a request several days ago, which means that who knows what's going on in OSHA right now, but yeah, all right, as soon as we can get it, please.
Yep, good. All right, good. Well, we got a lot of information coming to you, I think. So in the meantime, did you have any other reports from ACEP that you can give us?
Yeah, we're meeting with Rob Rodriguez, who is a member of the COVID task force for President-elect Biden. And we're meeting, that's one of the reasons I have to jump off the call. At this point, all he can tell us is they're in the they're interested in us gathering information. So doing surveys, finding out what exactly is going on the ground. So that's number one. I'll have a lot more, which I'll send to Paul later today, because I'm going to try to involve EMS. Rob is an emergency physician from San Francisco, so he gets it, at least as far as I can tell from like 3 emails. I'll know a lot more in about an hour and a half. Yeah. The second thing is that I know Jim's going to talk a little bit about the Eli Lilly antibody. We had sent a clinical alert out to all of our docs who are members of ACEP, saying that in many cases, we anticipate that this infusion is going to come to be done in the ED by default. In places that have infusion centers, obviously that works well. In places that have, that can, in larger places, they may be able to partition off a place in the ED, but clearly that this is going to involve the ED. The interesting thing about this is it will involve a 1 hour infusion of the drug, 1 hour of observing the patient. It's not clear whether that involves monitoring, but it doesn't sound like it. Anaphylaxis seems to be the big issue with this drug. It is to be given primarily at this point to high-risk patients who are COVID positive in the first 7 to 10 days of their illness. So they don't necessarily, in fact, highly unlikely that they will need to be admitted. So most of these patients will get the infusion and go home. We anticipate that this will be actually of several months of this, and as more of the antibody becomes positive, or comes available rather, they will actually make this for all individuals who are newly found to be COVID positive, with or without any symptoms, although clearly they're going to be, most of the people are going to be symptoms. We also anticipate that there will be some patients who will be brought from primary care offices, urgent care offices, etc., to the ED just to receive this infusion. A lot more information to come, a lot more. And I know that this doesn't sound like very much. And then on the vaccine front, we're gearing up now. We're hearing a lot of chatter and getting a lot of invitations to participate in discussions about the distribution of vaccines. Everything that I hear so far involves both doing this within the ED and doing this involving EMS. There is very significant concern about reaching vulnerable populations, which unfortunately are the, that's who we see and that's who we know about. But maybe John has some more information because after all, you're a Fed. Anything more, John, that you can talk about? Nope. Okay. His lips are sealed. So Jim, do you want to take it away from here?
Yeah, I just thinking about the ED implications. A lot of the hospitals want to keep their infusion centers disease-free. They typically are small and located in a part of the building that doesn't have negative pressure. So I think there's going to be significant pressure on the EDs. And talking to the hospitals already, I think what was our emergency department waiting areas may become our emergency department infusion centers. So real ED implications. I don't think we're going to be rerouting, patients specifically to centers that have the antibodies, but who knows, according to availability. And you've covered all the other antibody issues, Sandy. Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is the distribution of the antibody is going to be based upon a formula that has to do with the number of cases that have been reported to HHS portal or HHS Protect portal, plus, and then some weighting for the number of hospitalizations that have been reported. So the number of positive tests plus the number of hospitalizations, and that will determine a sort of a number. And then that number will be used to distribute the stuff to states, and then the states will be responsible for supplying it to the individual counties and individual hospitals. One thing to think about is if your facilities or your county is not participating or not providing data to HHS Protect, your initial number will be 0. And so there is some potential problems there. And I actually don't have a map that shows me who is and who is not reporting to HHS Protect. I do know that in some cases, California in particular has problems about reporting data to central authorities like the CDC, but I absolutely have no idea whether they're participating with HHS Protect. They did say that 93% of hospitals are reporting to HHS Protect.
Okay. Let's see. John, how are you doing on time? John Kramer.
I'm doing okay on time. I should be here the whole meeting.
We have an afternoon meeting, I think something at 1 o'clock. I can't remember. Was that a CDC?
1 o'clock your time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What is it again? Is it a CDC meeting, or I can't remember what it was about? Or is it your meeting?
Yeah, EMS stakeholder groups are meeting with the CDC on vaccination issues.
Okay, got it. And then, yeah, I saw the invites for our people. So thank you so much then for doing that. Hey, so while I got you on, might as well get a report from you. Anything from your end that you can tell us?
Nothing real earth shattering. I mean, with everything that's going on, we're continuing to look at PPE issues. It continues to be a challenge to get good, reliable information from EMS agencies about what their statuses are. Looking more at the vaccine issues, we've been doing a lot in the last week about rural issues as well.
Okay, got it. And then last time we were talking about we met on election day. Last time we were worried about things that might get unstable, out there in the communities. Anything new, any new intel or anything we should know about, or just still we're going to watch the next few weeks, correct?
The next few weeks to several weeks.
Okay, got it. Okay, good to know then. And then let's see if there was anything else. I think that's the last thing we left off on you. So thanks a lot for everything you're doing. It's just fantastic. And Sandy, the other thing is Rob Rodriguez is in the food chain with Chris Colwell, who is one of our principals here at San Francisco, and so knows him well. He's not been that EMS oriented, but he's been research oriented, good person, and so on. So I think you'll enjoy working with him and all that. And of course, we got Mike Osterholm on board as well up there, which is, he's one of our Eagle guys. And so it's been really great. He did a nice presentation today, but he also said it's going to be the Grim Reaper is going to be out over the next few months, and it's going to be kind of rough. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm glad we have him on there because, and it was really complimented today by several different media from NBC to CNN to CBS. So it's been really great to have him on board. The other thing is, let's see, Chris Colwell, see if he is on. Speaking of which, Chris, are you there? If not, he was going to try to get on. He had to work a shift, but he was going to try to get off it with us here. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Hey, Mike Levy, hate to catch a cold, blindside you, but anything report from the NAMSP side since you're their president-elect and coming into office within a couple months?
Yeah, thanks. I guess just very briefly, I think today you should see the conference registration go up. Of course, sadly, but goodly, we're going to be all virtual, so we're looking for that opportunity. So please look to the conference registration to come up today on NAMSP's website. You can also see a great webinar, a town hall meeting that happened last week. Featuring various members, but Kevin McVaney was the lead regarding ketamine, and it was very, very good. So you can find that on the website as well. And we also had one was led by Lakshmi. Was that a couple days ago? I'm losing track of time, but on public health interface with EMS, another great one. So I have to peel off your date as well, but thanks for inviting me in for a quick comment there, Paul.
Oh God, yeah. I want you to comment more. In fact,
let's make it a thing.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, and you'll. By the way, I just wanted to let you know it looks like our paper will get accepted just between you and me about the TXA issue, and I'll let you know more about that. And just have to do some minor revisions. So it's really cool. But just the principles of going with too quick, early is what it comes down to, and so that way you'll live long enough to have complications, but you'll live. You're
a master at bringing the message forward, but thanks for doing that, Paul.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, so let's see what else that we have while we're at. Hey, Corey, since we haven't heard from you for a while, anything to report from Nashville while I have you there? Oh, sorry.
I wish there was something really good to announce. Just more people getting COVID, less people wearing masks. I think the epidemic is over, is what they're telling me.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So, all right, good to know. I was wondering when that was going to happen. So that's good to hear. So thanks for filling us in, Professor. Okay, but it's great to have you on board. We're going to have some interesting conversations coming up in presentations, especially with John's presentation. I want to put you on just a second, John, so be prepared. And then if I get some time, Meg, I'll throw you in there to give the presentation. And next week, I think we'll have a presentation on our cardiac arrest stuff. Several of you have seen that already, and it sounds like it was a positive reaction to it, so which is kind of cool. Jim, any reports from IAFSC or the firefighters, anything up there on that end?
Yep. Let me start with what you asked about earlier, which was the how we notifying our personnel about COVID.
Yes.
Eagles, we only have 27 responses. Mark Worth is going to keep the survey open. Please complete it. So far, the biggest change, Paul, is that a lot more of our services are using email to notify people than in prior years. The phone is still used quite a bit. In person is used more, and by email is used more. But please, if everybody will complete that survey, we'll have a lot better power to hand off to Sandy. The big issues from IFF-IFC this morning are the implementation of the vaccine. And John will talk about this, but Pfizer has its own distribution network and its own development. It did not participate in Operation Warp Speed. So some of what we're planning for may be a little different because Pfizer's doing their own distribution. So that will be interesting. The fire EMS personnel are getting more infections. And so it's kind of up to us to reinforce the need for universal precautions, both at home and at work. A big concern amongst the union people in particular is that people have gotten lax about their use of masks and about they're not congregating. And even things like union meetings are becoming big super spreader events. So you may want to go back and just encourage hand washing, mask, distancing, and universal precautions when it comes to patients. The second piece to our conversation today was about potential use of the vaccine. And some departments have said so far that they're having very little uptake amongst their people in wanting to get the vaccine. And we urged people not to publicize that because a lot of people worked very hard to get fire EMS, emergency department personnel in the first tier. And if we publicly go out and say, nah, we're not going to take it anyway, that's not going to come across very well. So much of this so far has been public education and not safety-oriented, medical-oriented publication and information distribution. The CDC, their conference call yesterday with the vaccine task force, they are going to name the program specifically. It will be called Vaccinate with Confidence. They will have 2 systems in place to do information sharing and about adverse event reporting. So Paul, we'll talk about that more on a later thing, but they're very concerned about uptake rates of the vaccine. And we as scientists need to wait until there's a reason to vaccinate and a safety profile that we can share, and then share it with our people to give them confidence in the vaccine if it's needed. And then eventually, of course, there'll be multiple vaccines. Some will be better for certain groups than others, and we'll have to be their medical resources for that. So that's what's going on across those parties. Thank you.
Good. So a couple of comments. I've been keeping in touch with Mike over the last few weeks in deep background because he's really busy. I mean, he's 24/7. I'm really worried about him, but he's doing a great job. But a couple of things that came out, and I don't want to speak for him, but if I was to paraphrase a little bit what I was hearing, is several concerns. First of all, with the vaccination, it's very exciting. It sounds great, but we're still not sure. I got to drill down more, or some of us have to drill down more to find out what that 90% was. They basically, tested it in a large percentage of people as it went up, and then they had, but were the outcomes, did they prevent it? Was it like less disease? You were less sick? All those things we have to get more of a drill down on those. We're going to try to ascertain that for you. It's just like, when we talk about the flu shot working for people, but it may not prevent you from getting the flu, but you're going to decrease and mitigate your hospitalizations and deaths, particularly in vulnerable people, et cetera. So we still don't have all that information yet from Pfizer, but we're hoping to get it. And they do have their own distribution system. It's they've got the kits all put together and all ready to go, and say they can do really tens of millions. So I hope that's the case, and we'll have to see. But again, it's the other end, as Mike was saying to me, is that are people going to have the ability to store store it, with the cooling systems that you have to have, and that's going to be a big part of it as well. So it's still a lot to do. One of the things he did bring up also is that the people are going to be indoors more, of course, and if they're not already. And that is an area where he was saying that there is an accumulation in homes. Let's say, for example, in hospitals, you may get, in terms of per hour, there may be 10 recycles of circulation of air, or that may only happen once or twice an hour in homes. I wasn't quite clear what he meant by that, but the point is that he does say that the virus can accumulate in homes, and when people are going to get together more often and think they're with their own families, a lot of times family members are bringing it in, just like a firefighter is bringing it into the station, same kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting, and whatever we can do to even wear masks in our own homes sometimes might be something that's going to be a consideration, and so just a thought. So those are a couple of the things I could do. I wish he was here to present it himself, though. All right, so let's move on to John.
Can I make just one suggestion? If once the evidence is all in and we as a group have reviewed it and feel that the vaccination is safe, which I really hope it is, we need to, I think, speak out as a unified voice in recommending it to our people. That this is not like, do you really believe in doing X or Y? This, if it turns out to be 90+% effective with little to no side effects, it's like not endorsing polio vaccine at a time that in the old days, I guess no one debated it, but now there's so much anti-vax out there.
Yeah,
I know it's probably going to give me autism, but I'm going to get the shot anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just think about having a small writing group that makes a clear declarative recommendation if the science supports vaccination.
Yeah. I heard that you're artistic. Is that right? Is that right?
Man, nobody in this group has done so much with so little.
Yeah. Well, no, I absolutely like, and just doing an extrapolation, if we represent, I looked at nighttime populations and looked at people commuting in during the day and did all that homework, we're probably representing, somewhere between 20% and a quarter of the population. Therefore, I'm making the extrapolation about our workers. We have a huge, people working for us is a large number, especially if we cover the first responders and even the police as well at our local area. So I agree with you. We will do that. And, that I think we don't have to be outspoken. We just got to get it done too, but we'll do both. So
then use our contacts at GEMS and EMS World to promulgate along with anything else we have with ASAP.
Yeah, we should get them on our call sometime. That would be a great idea. I like it. So
EMS World is good by me. I don't know about GEMS and their people.
That's so good. So any event, so very cool. So that a great comment. So let's move on here, if you don't mind, to John Ju, because he's got to get off because of the plumbing problems in his place, right? So don't want to put you under any water pressure, but let's go ahead and do it. Hey, John, so I might have you do 2 or 3 things. First of all, comment on my comments about the Pfizer project so far. Our results.
Pfizer project.
Yeah.
I just saw the press release. Can you hear me? I just saw the press release, but it looks very promising. In fact, it's a little bit too promising because I've never seen a viral vaccination with that high efficacy rate here as well. So we'll see what the final data shows. I think the real issue there is safety as well, but so far it seems to be safe. To everybody in the audience, this is my first experience, honestly, with an mRNA vaccine. I can't remember for the life of me if I ever had a product with mRNA in it as well. So I'll have to do a little bit more research. But it's a breakthrough, and I assume the Moderna vaccine is going to have similar efficacy as well.
So John, if you will look, when you do your research and review of that for us, if you would, for my sake, check on what it means by that. Did it completely prevent it? How did they come up with that? Did it mitigate the severity? All those kinds of things. Okay. So,
but they're advertising 90% or so efficacy. Which is amazing, actually.
And when you say efficacy, that means that
prevention of infection as well.
Yeah, I just like to always make sure people understand efficacy versus effectiveness, right? That kind of thing. So, good. All right. So what are you going to do? Lilly infusion of antibodies, or what are you going to do?
I'm going to talk about general antibodies here, and I'm going to share my screen here, assuming I can remember how to do this here. Okay. let me know we can see it.
Yep, we got it.
All right. I'm not sure if I got it myself here. Okay, so hang on. All right. So we're going to talk about antibodies. Paul, confirm if you can actually see my slides moving through. You should see a graph.
And then, by the way, we're going to probably have Meg come on right after you and do that short presentation about, the issue. You're familiar with the stuff that we found. So, okay.
Yeah.
We presented ASAP. All right, good. We can see it's perfect. Okay. Although this is like, you have to walk us through this slide if you got a little pointer. Okay. So it's kind of complicated, right?
Okay. So can you see my pointer here as well? I'm not sure if you can.
I don't see the pointer yet. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to do it without a pointer, without doing it. If everybody can see the slide, the reason why this slide's up is that this is the natural immunity where IgG shows up around week 2. And the half-life of IgG is approximately 21 days or so. So most of IgG should be gone in a couple months here as well. So that's what we're talking about. So we're going to talk about the SARS-CoV-2, especially neutralizing antibody and the significance of the Lilly product, which was sort of interesting how they got it here as well. So the real question is, how does this monoclonal antibody work in protection of the against us for the virus? The answer is almost like a trailer ball hitch, where you actually change the size of the ball and it doesn't fit into the hitch. The hitch is the ACE2 receptor, and the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein is the ball. So if you change the size and configuration of the ball, it won't fit the hitch, and it won't be able to couple. So that's essentially the analogy of what we actually have here. It's interesting that we got the heads up on this is a phase 2 study. Again, it's not an efficacy study. It's a phase 2 study where they're trying to determine the dose of the efficacious portion of the dose. And you can see 3 doses there. But it turned out that the doses, which is not intuitive, was the middle dose, which is 2800 milligram IV one-time infusion here as well. Again, for people that can relate to the public knowledge, this is identical to what the president received. He got the Moderna vaccine, Moderna IgG, but this is the Lilly IgG vaccinations. So you can actually sort of see farther to the left is the lower the threshold. In other words, the higher the cyclic threshold number, the lower the amount of virus. So you can sort of see the blue line, and that's the 2800 line here as well. But okay, so let's assume that we know the efficacious dose. What does that really mean? So you can sort of see on the graph, there are 2 portions of the graph. One of them is outpatient, which is the box diagram. The other one is the hospitalized patient, which is the dotted lines. And you can sort of see that the profound decrease was in the outpatient, who are probably have less virus than the hospitalized patients here as well. So once the virus is replicated after a certain period of time, you really can't, you have a hard time stopping the virus replication here as well. And this is the final area that you can sort of see. The blue line is the better line, and that's the Lilly line here as well. It's very interesting anecdotally how they found it. They found it from a single patient in an NIH lab, did a lot of research and isolated the single antibody, and they basically cloned the antibody, and this is what you really have here as well. So the bottom line is that if you give this antibody early, especially with remdesivir, which is a polymerase inhibitor, that is synergistic, like we give antibiotics all the time. So I think the combination is early on, earlier the better. Number 2, probably in combination with remdesivir. Number 3, a single infusion of the antibody. The remdesivir is a 5-day infusion, as people understand here as well. So let's move on. So we're going to talk about really what the significance of the antibody is. And there's been a lot of controversy regarding, does the antibody decay? Do I still have antibodies? And what is the consequences of the vaccination here as well? So there are 3 key studies. One of them, again, on the configuration. This is the spike protein on the right-hand side. The stem is the RBD, and the spike protein is the spike protein. So it looks like a mushroom as well. And you can sort of see the RDB protein, which is the stem of the protein, and the antibody is against the S1. So the reason I'm showing you this is that I'm going to throw some nomenclature. And for me, I can't remember what the nomenclature is until I have a model figuring out in my head. So this helped me in figuring out where the antibody is going here as well. I'm going to send this to all our people on this call as well, to Jim later on. So the first question is, what is the duration of antibody? And this was typical Icelandic, Nordic complete fashion here. It was published in New England Journal of Medicine here. And they basically looked at three kinds of antibodies. One of them was the antibody against the nucleoprotein, which is the encapsule around the SARS-CoV virus. The second one, they looked at the antibody against the S1 RDB complex, which is the mushroom as well. And they looked at the IgA antibody, and they looked to see if it decayed here as well. So they basically used a shotgun to determine all the antibodies and figured out which ones decayed here as well. So you can sort of see the diagram, the nuclear protein labeled M, and obviously the RNA here as well, just to make sure the nomenclature is correct here as well. So when you have pan-IgG, this basically through the kitchen sink, you can sort of see the number of days of decay, and 125 days is like a very long time. That's 4 months here as well. So you have a sustained antibody titer for many months here as well. So we can sort of extrapolate that our vaccination will probably last a couple of months at a minimum here. Again, this is the pan-IgG, but this is the antibody that's probably most significant. And this is the anti-S1 RDB antibody, which is the protective antibody. And you can sort of see it stayed up like the total antibody assay. And finally, you have the anti-NS1 antibody, and was sort of decayed. So the bottom line is that they did a neutralization test, but the protective antibody basically stayed up for at least 4 months here as well. The second study, which I don't have a lot of graphs on, which was published in Science, is by Ania Wannberg here as well. And they basically confirmed this study. They found that the robust IgG antibody stayed up for over 90% of the converters here. And more importantly, they actually did a neutralization study. So like all of us in science, we want a second and third confirmation of the initial findings. And this is the second confirmation, and it's done by very reputable people, including Sinai System of New York City. And you can sort of see the neutralization antibody here above in the line, blue line, and that means that you have a protective antibody for over 4 months in this cohort published in Science here as well. So you can sort of see the neutralization antibody, anything above the dotted line is protective here as well. And so again, this is the confirmation study, well published. Part of the controversy, and I've got 2 more slides here, is Dr. So's neutralization antibody. And they basically showed seroconversion, but there was a decline in the neutralization antibody here as well in a cohort of healthcare providers who were basically asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic here as well. The RDB antibody, which is the protective antibody, and perhaps the S protein, the N protein antibody is probably not protective here as well, but all of them stayed up. But this is the graph that actually caused the controversy here. In the right-hand side, if you see the green line, it basically decayed to baseline here as well. So there was a lot of discussion regarding why this study showed a decay in other studies, and some of that may be the assay itself. So that's essentially it. I'm gonna turn it back over to Paul and be able to take any questions here.
Yeah, so first of all, let me put in perspective. You nailed it when you said it depended on the assay.
Yeah.
In most of these studies, such as the Icelandic study, these were actually serums, right, that were taken. They're not doing a little finger stick point of care test that so many people are.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right?
Yes.
And what is the testing assay method? They get a serum and how's it run?
That's correct.
Is it, how's it? Yeah.
If you're looking for the wrong, in other words, not to pay political, if you don't look, you're not going to find as well. So.
Okay, so but my point is these are done in the laboratory with specific things looked at versus our little point of care things and all that, etc.
Yes,
So,
that's correct.
So it actually gets a little bit, it's much more multifactorial as well. And then Meg, are you able to give your presentation as well? If you don't mind, is that okay? Or can you do that real quickly?
Yes, yes. Thank you
Before
so
you
much
go,
for the
I'm going to,
opportunity.
while you're setting it up, what I want to do is just set this up, is that early on there was this rage to go get the antibody testing kits to see if the people, especially if you had people who were PCR positive, were they immune now? Well, did they have antibodies? Did this sustain them? But it was kind of controversial because a lot of people were negative, even though they were known to have the illness and they had PCR positive stuff. And so but there may be some physiological explanation besides just the assay as well that contributes to this. And I think it's the assay as well, but whatever. So if you don't mind, would you roll with this one? So.
Yes, so I'm Meg Marino, and I had the pleasure of working with Paul on this study, as well as some other amazing EMS people, looking at the age differences among persons with positive COVID molecular testing who later tested negative for antibodies. And so we worked with Dr. Peter Antevi and the city of Coral Springs, Florida. He was our PI. Thank you so much. We also worked with the city of New Orleans and Dr. Emily Nichols, Maricar Cabral, and the Florida Department of Health, including Dr. Ken Shepke, Emma Spencer, and Scott Rivke. So thank you so much for all of your help in this. So let's dive in and talk about the background. So there are a lot of controversies that exist about the accuracy and the ultimate value of SARS-CoV-2 antibody testing, particularly when those with prior positive molecular testing are later or who had positive PCR testing are later antibody negative. And the reasons for this are because there are some insensitivities in the tests, there can be no measurable antibody response, and there can also be a transient response or a very late response. However, prior studies with other coronaviruses, especially MERS, have had paradoxically indicated that there is a prevalence of undetectable antibodies among younger infected persons, particularly those who have had milder illness. And so our study objective was to determine if the age or severity of illness are associated with negative antibody testing in those who had prior positive COVID molecular tests. So we looked at 2 geographically separated cities with contrasting demographics and different EMS models. And we looked at EMS personnel using 2 different lateral flow chromatographic IgM and IgG immunoassay products. Site 1 included 39 volunteers from the general population to serve as a reference group. They had no prior symptoms and no history of a prior positive PCR COVID test. Site 1 also included principals with prior positive PCR tests, and they received simultaneous finger stick and venipuncture antibody assays. Site 2 included 17 principals who had prior PCR positive tests, and they received finger stick assays using a different product. And all of our subjects were surveyed for age, sex, predefined characteristics, symptoms, etc. So what did we find? This was really interesting because at both sites, we saw about 30% of PCR positive people were antibody negative for both IgM and IgG. Those who had the finger stick and the venipuncture assays had identical results, and the reference group, which was about 39 people, all tested negative for both finger stick and venipuncture. Our reference group was made up of 59% women, and the mean age was 45. The group that had a positive PCR and positive antibody was about 57% women, and the mean age was again about 45 years old. So the reference group and the group that was positive for PCR and positive for antibody were very similar. But we saw a significant difference in the group that was PCR positive and antibody negative, with that including only about 40% women, and the mean age there was about 35 years old. So if we look at the statistical significance and the age difference between the group that was PCR positive and antibody positive versus those that were PCR positive and antibody negative, that p-value is about 0.0089. And then if we compare that to the reference group, it was 0.0028. And each site individually showed statistically significant differences in age. We also saw trends that were not statistically significant, in that those who were antibody negative were more likely to have milder disease, they were more likely to be men, and there was a shorter period between PCR testing and antibody testing. So let's look a little bit more closely at our results. Again, we had two contrasting cities with two different tests, but had the same statistically significant results. So if we combine site 1 and site 2, and look at those who are PCR positive and antibody negative, and compare that to those that were PCR positive and antibody positive, we see a real significant difference in the mean age, about 34 to about 44, and that two-tailed p-value is about 0.0089. And if we compare the group that was antibody positive, antibody negative and PCR positive to the reference group, there was also a significant age difference there of, again, about 10 years, and the two-tailed p-value was 0.0028. So there are some really clear limitations to our study. The biggest one is that the numbers studied at each site were very small. But even though we had these small numbers, we still had identical statistically significant results. There is a validation study being performed in a third large study, and even though the results are pending, the initial data is mirroring the same results as our data. And there may be some other factors. There were fewer women in the antibody negative group, and because of our small numbers, we're not sure if that was a coincidence, but we will hopefully see more as we see more studies like this with larger numbers. We need to validate this in other cities with other products, and we need long-term follow-up studies in immunity status. This is a really interesting signal that has been seen before, and it's clearly hypothesis generating for future research. So in conclusion, we saw we were using two different IgM and IgG lateral flow immunoassay products in two different ecological settings. And it was found at both sites that about 30% of persons with prior COVID positive PCR tests were antibody negative. And of those patients, they were more like, of those who were positive for PCR and antibody negative, were more likely to be significantly younger than those who were PCR positive and antibody positive compared to their counterparts or the general population. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this. And thank you so much to those who participated in this awesome study. I really appreciate it.
No, it's great. So it is an interesting signal because paradoxically, you think the people who don't generate antibodies are usually the older people, but in that sense, we're thinking about humoral antibodies, IgG, IgM, and it may be that there are other forms of study. There's a second thing is that at this point, those tests that we were doing were EUAs, basically not for finger stick, but the EUA was for venipuncture. So thanks to the Department of Health in Florida, we actually did this internal study that Peter led and found that they gave exactly the same results by doing it either direction, either thing. And that kind of makes sense. It's blood there, but at least that kind of confirmed it. And so that was a secondary thing that got us into it. And thanks to the, again, the Secretary of Health and the folks there in Florida, it was good. Ken Shepke, if you're here, you've sort of talked to us about this before, but what's your rationale for why you think that some people, had PCR positive and yet they maybe they didn't have to make humoral antibodies? Or if you're there, are you there, Ken?
Well, yeah. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate that.
And good study. This is your study too, so good job.
Well, thanks. It's a collaborative effort from a lot of really great people. So thanks. Great presentation. Nicely done. Well, I think we're seeing the folks with the most mild symptoms having the least likely of having humoral antibody response detectable by a lateral flow assay. And to what Dr. Ju was saying before, lateral flow assay is different than the ELISA studies that in some of the studies he was talking about, which is a lot more sensitive. So, so I think we're starting off with, if you're positive on these lateral flow assays, you probably have more antibodies than what would be detectable at a lower rate on a more sensitive study, like what was done in the Iceland studies. The other thing, if you have less of a severe illness, I guess that also correlates to a less strong immune response. So those are theories. And the last thing is these lateral flow assays measure the antibodies. They do not measure the T cell functionality of your immune system. And we've talked before about that T cell immunity in COVID-19 appears to be an important function of your immune system. So just the fact that we don't see the antibodies does not mean that those individuals don't have the T cell immunity that we see in other things. And a couple of just thoughts on this thing. Dr. Zhu, again, always brilliant. He's talking about the receptor binding domain, the RBD. That is highly conserved because I know folks have talked about, is this virus mutating? Is the vaccine going to be outdated by the time it comes around? And the good news is the receptor binding domain is very specific. It's a very small section of the spike protein, and the Pfizer vaccine that we were talking about is encoded for that specific portion. It's not just the entire spike protein, it's the receptor binding domain specifically of the spike protein, which this virus, if it were to change that domain area, it wouldn't be able to attach to the ACE2 receptor. So it can't change that spot very well and still effectively attach to your cells. So that is this virus's weakness, and that is, we have not been seeing that has been changing. That is a highly conserved area. So that speaks well to the likelihood that the Pfizer vaccine will continue. Oh, and one more thing. They had like 45,000 people in that Pfizer phase 3 trial. And the folks, they had like 90 something folks that turned up positive. Yeah. And the 90% efficacy means that of those, only 10% of the COVID positives were people are vaccinated. The other 90% had all had placebo.
Yeah. So there's safety issue there as well, because we looked at 44,000 people that got it and whatever. Okay, so Ken, what I always like is your analogy of when you talk about the T cells coming in, it's kind of like a fighter bomber seeing some insurgency somewhere, and they come in, strafe it, and take it out, so you don't have to send in the troops or the battleships later on with the humor. Is that sort of the analogy there as well, sir? Okay. All right. So that's very, very interesting. Anybody else have any questions for Meg on this, etc.? And if not, we can move on. So I think, and John, any reaction to that?
Oh, I think Ken really nailed it as well. Most of you have heard about the mink outbreak as well in Denmark.
Oh yeah.
And the mink outbreak actually had we don't know much. In fact, they're very hush hush, but they cut off the entire peninsula of Denmark here as well. So there's probably stuff that we don't know that's not hit the public. But what I'm trying to say is that there may have been an RBD configuration change in the mink, that the neutralization titers didn't work. Does that make sense as well? So again, it's something to watch out for, that we know RNA viruses mutate, but this is mutating in a animal population, and it's something to watch out for.
Right. I know they've cut off a lot of commerce and things coming in and out of, I know in the UK, I was talking to everybody and they were kind of blocking them last week from people coming in from Denmark. So that is interesting. I got to get our Denmark folks on the line someday.
So that's what to Dr. Zhu's point, that's the mutation we have to watch for. If the receptor binding domain mutates, then we have a problem.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, while I got you there, first of all, John, anything else from you? Thank you for all the presentations. And I know you got to get off with piping.
Yeah.
Issues, right?
I can stay on until he gets here, but I can. That was absolutely great presentation, Meg. I think you're on to something here as well. And I think Ken, and I think we're just observing here. What we don't know, again, I just want to say, is that we don't know the T cell portion of the killer cells. And there is also one more thread going on published in, I think, Science, where there may be cross immunity from the normal human non-COVID variant as well. There is an island in Japan that had a really low COVID presentation. And it turns out there may be cross antibodies and cross reaction to that here as well. So there's a lot more we don't know about.
Yeah. So again, as I've always said from day one, and one thing you can predict about you can predict about COVID is that's unpredictable. So as usual. So, all right, let's move on to some other issues that I'd like to deal with. But the first thing is, again, I want to basically thank everybody. I put in the notes, if you saw the invitation about Armistice Days tomorrow, and it was kind of interesting seeing the background and all that, that finally, that it was supposed to go into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month and all that. And but the important thing is to not only remember those who died in wars and who served in wars, regardless if they were injured or not or died or not. And the same thing goes out to the ones in the war and COVID, all our fellow people. We've already lost, 1,500 healthcare workers, as far as I know, it may be more than that, and that I'm aware of. And so it's pretty significant. A lot of them got it in the line of duty. And actually, I'm going to take a moment to serve a moment of silence for about 10 seconds for those of us on the front line who not only have died, but who may die in the future or become, permanently ill. Okay, and with that, I want to again announce that our CME for this shout, just make sure you get your credit for this, is going to be 119.42, 119.42. And so keep that in mind and get your thing done. And then next, Dr. Gilmore, are you still there? I think you had to get off, but are you still there by any chance, Scott?
I'm still here, Paul.
Hey, Scott, so do you want to give us, is it premature? Do you want to give a little insight to what we're thinking about next year's meeting for Eagles in person, maybe?
Why don't we hold off a little bit on that yet, Paul?
Okay, got it. So anyways, we just wanted to know we are working on potential plans for that, but we don't know yet or how it's going to work and, whether we should get everybody yet. The reason why I was saying is if people are going to take vacations or, plan something, it would be good for everybody to sort of at least have a heads up about what the potential plan might be if we do it. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, reserve, what is it?
June 14th through the 18th.
That is correct.
So that Monday, June 14th would be our arrival day. That's if you're just staying for our conference. The Eagle Creek would be on the 15th, 16th. And then the main Eagles is the Thursday, Friday. Instead of our Friday, Saturday configuration, we're going to do more of a Thursday, Friday thing this year. And again, people, therefore, they can come in early for the weekends, either before or after or whatever, if we do that. And of course, we're just basically not prepared to do that, but we just wanted to at least let you know if we are doing it, that would be the dates. And so just kind of protect those timings if you can. So that kind of, and then, and Dan, if we do that, would you be willing to help out with the fellows again, like we were talking about last year?
Yeah, happy to.
That's why I was actually thinking about that, to maybe get the dates out now, so everyone would know, right? So that kind of thing. Now, a lot of the other conferences are changing. AJ, you want to tell us what's happening with EMS today? Oh, did I lose you, AJ?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
EMS today is going to be moved to August 25 to 27 in San Antonio.
Okay, got it.
And that'll be a live event.
Okay, August 25 to 27 in SAT. Okay, got it. Yep. So I hope that the local folks are prepared for prime time here and there. So that's good. Well, thanks a lot. Anything else to report while I got you on, AJ, that you can think of?
Just that we're going to be offering a legend series on gems, and a lot of it will be dedicated to Craig Manifold, Jack Stout, and Jim Page. And the first person on the docket will be the very spry 94-year-old Gene Nagel, who helped found the Miami City fire system. And he's a great guy. He's in great shape for a 94-year-old. And Dr. Banerjee, a shout out to him. He and his team are arranging this because Dr. Nagel lives in the Palm Beach area.
Okay. Another person we could get a hold of who's also 94, actually almost 95 now, I think, is Dr. Cobb, Len Cobb. That would be a great person. I'll try to get you plugged in with him. Okay, good.
That'd be great.
All right, let me pivot over then. Anything else analogous there with Hillary Gates? Anything? EMS World's probably not till later. And what city is it happening in? It's in October or something like that, if I remember. It's not EMS City, but EMS World or the.
Yeah, October 4th through 8th.
Okay, October 4th.
In Atlanta. Dr. Kumar is going to be chatting with us about ride-alongs and other things. So we're excited to be down there, and looking forward to seeing what all of you guys want to submit. Our call for presentations is open until December 14th. So let me know what you want to talk about. Give me suggestions for new speakers, and happy to chat through any ideas you have.
Yeah, I thought that Meg Marino was pretty good. Did you see her earlier today on Regals?
Yeah, she's pretty good. She's done a little bit of work for us, and seems to be quite popular.
All righty. Wow, so let's go ahead and do a couple of run around the countries, people that we haven't talked to for a while. Let's see anybody else got any specific topics they'd like to go into before I start launching around and doing move around with the Rat Pack, etc. I think I've announced to you before that we've got some additional connections with what's going on up in up in Washington, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out for the next week. Hey, Rob Dunn, are you on? We haven't talked to you for a while in Detroit. Anything new to report or anything we should know about from your realm? Rob Dunn, are you still there? Can you hear me? You're got to unplug.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I got you now.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I thought I'd have to do the hand signals.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So, so this time we're behind many other parts of the country in terms of our second phase, third phase, depending on how you want to count it, phase. And it's interesting because what we've seen is that the rural parts of the state, particularly the Upper Peninsula, starting near the Wisconsin border, have gotten extremely busy and overwhelmed. And it's slowly trickling down through the rest of the state. It's only in the last 7 days that we've seen significant increases in positivity rate in the Detroit metro area. We have one hospital in Macomb County that stopped taking trauma transfers today because of their COVID volume. We've been having a number of kind of response calls, and I thank everybody who shared with me some of their experiences on relief missions that have occurred in their community. And I had a conference call with some of you guys on Sunday that was super helpful, because there was a little bit of some of our politicians kind of pushing towards this one size fits nobody approach that we used in the spring when we were overwhelmed. So I think we've got a little bit more nuanced approach to how we can provide staffing and relief to hospitals. We've been very closely working with our health systems from the EMS standpoint as well as our local preparedness standpoint. I think in a better, more collaborative, effective way than we did in the spring. So, right now we're a little bit in the calm before the storm. We're just seeing, literally yesterday, 2 of our hospitals reported their busiest day since March.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, good. Well, it's great to see you. I always love having you on. And, I want to repeat for those who didn't know, but Rob's had a really amazing, I don't know how he survived year, because they put him in charge of everything from the police to the, what was it? You even had, would you have garbage taker, sanitation workers under you?
Yeah, fortunately we outsourced that, but the bus drivers, that was the big challenge.
That's right, the bus drivers. I knew there was something that you had to handle. That's it. So anyway, I was just trash talking with you. That's awesome. I couldn't help it. So anyways, no, but you've had a good year. How are things working with the police? Is it better, the same? What's going on there?
Well, what we've been seeing is kind of cases trickling in, again, just like before, not so much interdepartmental, but people, their kids home from college and they got exposed and they get sick and they come to work. And, we've been tracking a lot more cases from that kind of fringe of community spread. I expect a lot more of that in the next couple of weeks.
All right, got it. Okay, thank you so much then. I really appreciate it. Hey, Dan, since we haven't talked to you for a while, anything new happening in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, so much like Rob, we're starting to see things really kick up here in Indianapolis. In fact, we had a record number of runs for one day in our service with full hospitals. I just finished eating. I don't have COVID. But sprinkling into that, we are about to, any minute, have an announcement on a grand jury trial for a police action shooting that was rather contentious in the spring. So yeah, keep Indianapolis in your thoughts right now. So I'm not sure I'm coming home today.
Yeah, well, we will do that. Let's jump down to Tucson. Are things kind of cooling off down there, or are they getting worse with the college park there, so to speak, right? What can you tell us, Josh? Oop, can you hear us, Josh? Are you there still? Thought you're there. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe just he can't hear or distracted on something else, but we'll leave it at that. I may have just jumped off for all I know. Okay, let me go down to Florida though. Let's go to Miami if you don't mind. Paul, can you talk at this point in time? You're just on the phone. Paul Adams, tell us a little bit about what's happening in Miami, because I think things are picking up there from what I heard from the conference calls today. Oop, can you hear us, Paul Adams? Maybe he had to get off too. Everybody's, yeah, I think he's on, but it just done. So let me move along. Angus, anything happened on, can you report? Because you've heard a lot of the reports today, if you don't mind, Angus Jameson.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so locally here in my area, we've jumped from under 5 to 6.5% positivity. Our cases are back up in the neighborhoods we were a little bit over the summer, but we really don't have a significant increase in hospitalizations locally, although I think Ken has some good numbers for the state of Florida as a whole. One thing I just thought of as we were hearing from Dr. Dunn up in Detroit is it's kind of amazing to me how many different responsibilities we've all been assigned in addition to our normal jobs through this thing. It'd be interesting to see if that got captured somewhere, all the different things that we were asked to do.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were asked to take on the job of being in public. A lot of people were taking on jobs as like the public health authorities in some of their areas, etc. And I just got a text from Paul, said he couldn't get off mute, so I don't know why that is, but you know, it's unfortunate. But but pipe in anytime you want, Paul, if you can just interrupt us. So if you can get on. Okay, and but what else is it? You heard the report today from around Florida? Anything else new that are things picking up in different areas? That's what I'm starting to hear, right?
Yeah, we heard from folks down in the Miami and Palm Beach area that they were having significant numbers of people out, both with cases and on quarantine. We heard from Ken, I'm not sure if he's still on, that we're at 24 per 100,000 for the whole state with an R0 of 1.14, which is up from 1.10 a week ago.
That Panhandle people, remind me what they were talking about.
I didn't catch that piece, Paul.
Okay, got it. No, that's it. Because I thought they were just looking at the hospitalizations. They're having more hospitalizations thing in transports, but maybe not as sick.
Hey, Paul, this is Peter. I can answer that one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, so it seems like, you know, across our entire region that there are, you know, although we're seeing an uptick in cases, the severity of these cases aren't that bad. And so there's, you know, if you look at the ventilator use throughout Broward and Miami-Dade County, and Palm Beach County for that matter, it's barely upticked. In Broward, there's a 0% change, although there's probably about a 10% increase in hospitalizations. So they're just seeing sicker patients. They're not being hospitalized as frequently. And it could be due to the younger age group, or like you alluded to, Paul, which is the fact that people are wearing masks and perhaps the kind of inoculation dose is lower. So still unclear as to why people aren't getting as sick, which is a good thing.
Yeah, but you guys don't wear mink coats down there, right? So it's probably not that. So
no, but it's clear that the virus knew when election day was. It's very interesting.
Exactly right. All right, hey Ben Launer, I haven't talked to you for a bit. It's great to have you on. What's up? What's happening in your area? Or are you still on there? I think you had to get off, I thought, but you there still, Ben?
Always for the show that never ends, Paul and colleagues. How are you doing?
Hey, how's everything in Balti? Everything okay, or what's going on there?
Well, the usual stuff, as a matter of fact. So, and I appreciate the discussion. We have had just a serious uptake in COVID cases. So, not only has it hit our firefighters, I believe our workforce. Sometimes the absentee rate is up to about 10% on some days. It's also hit dispatch centers. So, we have been hammering the message home, but it's very difficult, and I think there's an issue with complacency. This is also, of course, against the backdrop of a nearly steady call volume. So that's another challenge. And especially our hospitals are at capacity in this urban area. As you know, we have a very high utilization of 911 here in Baltimore. So multiple challenges. And to round out the update, we are continuing to push, some mobile integrated health initiatives, telephone triage, and we are likely going to revisit contracting with maybe some private surge units to augment our response, because I think it's going to hit us pretty hard during the second COVID surge.
I thought it's kind of interesting. That's a good perspective and a reminder. I remember a couple of years ago when Fiona Moore in London was saying how they'd had strikes, and I go, well, how does that apply to us? She goes, well, what if 80% of your people suddenly didn't show up to work one day? Or what if a terrorist blew up your dispatch center? Do you have redundancy built in? How do you do that? So that may be something we need to be thinking about in the back of our heads, because what I'm hearing from Mike Osterholm is that it's going to get worse. So to be very blunt, so everybody's aware of it. And I hope we all don't get as sick as we used to, but there are still people, young people even dying from this thing and not worth getting it, etc. So, okay, well, thank you so much then. And thanks for being on board with us. Really great to have you. So it really is.
Hey, mutual. Thank you all.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Goodlow, since you have double responsibilities with a couple different cities, what's happening in your world besides that everybody went red in that state, didn't they, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, so great to see everybody. Definitely an increase in EMS volumes and hospital census, including COVID-related cases here. Just managing day to day, lots of great national stuff going on with ACEP and other organizations. Just had a very encouraging conversation yesterday as the ACEP liaison to ACS COT and their EMS committee. So I think Kramer may have called in for part of that. It was a very encouraging call. So just be on the lookout for good stuff with them ahead. Mike Sayer and I are finishing up a project that involved Rob Dunn and some other folks on interim guidelines for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest resuscitation, obviously in this pandemic era, and we're anticipating that will get published in one of the circulation network of journals here in the next few weeks. So hopefully we'll be able to bring that to the group. And then also happy to report that the ACEP coordinated white paper on excited delirium is up and running. And Rob Dunn is also involved in that project. Rob's been a great resource for us here in a number of these projects recently, and certainly appreciate him.
He probably cloned him or something. I don't know how he's doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've got some great literature review ongoing right now. Pretty aggressive timeline to get a first draft done toward the end of the year. So just lots of great stuff to report. Obviously a challenging time, but super excited that we have the collective expertise and enthusiasms that we do here. So great to see everyone.
Yeah. And great. Hey, any update? I don't know if you know on the 60 Minutes story. Is that happening, or is it still out the wind, or anybody heard anything? Peter, have you heard anything? Jeff, have you heard anything?
I've not heard anything.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I reached out to the producer from 60 Minutes, and she said that Bill, I guess who's the person they interviewed, should reach out to the producer who interviewed him, and she will tell him when it will air. So that may have to be like a Sandy.
I'll talk to her. Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah. So. All right, got it. Hey, so let's see. There was someone I wanted to ask a question to, if I could find who it was. Hey, Stein, are things still staying relatively quiet out in Colorado Springs, or anything changing there by any chance?
So in our neck of the woods, we have a tremendous increase, I think, like a lot of areas are experiencing. We have our hospitals are now becoming more full. We have more COVID patients in the hospitals than we did even in our largest spike in the spring. And so we're definitely heading in the wrong direction. I haven't heard anything officially from the governor's office about statewide mandates. Hopefully those are going to come down soon. We're starting to have double-digit positives for COVID within our EMS systems, each individual system. This is the time that we're really going to be expecting this to have an operational impact on our EMS agencies, including fire agencies, which we planned for but didn't experience in the spring.
Okay, got it. All righty. Well then, hey, Glenn, are you on there still from New York City? Glenn Aceda, are you around?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? I don't know if my
Yeah, I
computer's
can hear you. So here's the thing, I was going to see what Rob Holman's going to say and but we saw after the election results, supposedly where they declared the president-elect on Saturday, there was all these rallies and people getting together without any spacing. And granted, it was outdoors, but still, are people looking into tracking what if cases are going to rise or whatever, and where those hot spots might have been?
Yeah, I think so. Here in New York City, as a lot of other major cities, we were waiting for any potential civil unrest, and our EMS operations had everything prepared for election day. And I'm like, election day is not going to be the day. It's going to be either the day after, a couple of days after, which it turned out to be. And here in New York City, it was more elation than any negative things. Right. But you did see on CNN and MSNBC these clusters of people gathering. Down in Times Square, it was almost not as bad as Times Square during the New Year's Eve ball drop, but there are quite a few people that were congregating. Luckily, most were wearing masks and such. So there is some tracing going on by the city now. New York State's positivity has gone up a little bit. New York City has also. Over the last 7 days, it was under 2. Now we're over 2. Our clusters of certain zip codes have kind of been managed now. Our EMS volume over the last week still is below normal, bounces anywhere from 3,300 to about 3,800, when, as I always mention, about 4,200 is normal for us. Hospital bed occupancy still remains 81, 82%. So we're kind of watching that. And, the vaccination as well, we're looking at, and I know there's a question out before, we're trying to see if the state will allow our paramedics to vaccinate when the vaccine does come out. We're working on that. And we're monitoring everything.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to, it would be very interesting to see if that, but hopefully, actually, I like to know, was there a good breeze that day? They either blew the virus at you or blew it away. That's what I'd like to know. Right?
Hopefully away from New York and towards maybe New Jersey, depending on which way it blew over.
You always try to get upwind of it. That's all.
That's right. And I always, as I mentioned, our shootings have, as of November 1st, they doubled last year. 796 for 2019. Yeah. And then we actually hit, double that, 1602 as of November 1st. And since then, we've had about a dozen shootings already. So we're going to surpass it.
Yeah, I reported that on your behalf last week. So I give everybody, it just, what can I say? All right. So let's go on. Hey, since I haven't talked to you for a while, Jeff Jarvis, anything to new report out of your neck of the woods there at Williamson County and in the Austin area, et cetera? I don't see any of the other Austin guys there. Maybe I don't see them, but anything you can tell us, Jeff, or that we should know about?
He was shaking his head no, and I think he's on the phone, Paul.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, good. There's nothing. And then Joe Holly, how about you? Anything going on in Memphis?
Pretty much ditto from what you heard from the others. Our naught is 1.18, and we're at about 87+% bed utilization right now. So long ED offload times, lots of demand for EMS services, and things are definitely going in the wrong direction.
All right, RJ, how about you? Anything up there in St. Paul?
Same in Minnesota. We've been hanging at 5% for weeks, and we spiked to about 14% now. All the hospitals are packed. Lots of boarding. Hopefully, we're not going to follow Wisconsin, but a lot of people think that we're in the same pattern.
They think you are, but you're not, or you're worried that you are going that direction?
We're worried that we're going that direction.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, good luck. How is your St. Paul firefighters holding up? Are they cool?
We got about 30 of them out. That's a problem in the hospitals too, just like everybody else. We've got a lot of people that are out. We're having trouble staffing.
Okay. Got it. Dustin, how about you? Anything going on new there since we last talked?
No, sir. Just the same as everybody else is saying. Our effective is about 1.2 something today. Our 4 major systems are all in the 90% occupancy in med-surg and ICUs. And the rate of our first responder positives is becoming ridiculous. We have had more record high days over the past 2 weeks than we've had non-record high days. It takes Cincinnati a while to actually catch up to the rest of the country, but once we do a good job of it, apparently.
Okay, good. So since we're in Ohio and on the seas, how about Tom Collins? Anything going on in Cleveland, Tom?
Hey, Paul, sadly to say, echoing exactly what everybody else is
Okay.
doing right now.
Yeah, your conversation's kind of modulated, but it sounds like it's all pretty much ditto from everybody else then. Okay. Let's see, who have I not captured today that's on the line still, etc. It looks like I've gotten pretty much everything. Peter Antevi, anything else? You do the statewide thing in Florida so far, but is there anything else then you want to report to in any realm? We were really thankful for you giving us the report last week on the cardiac, the PALS information. So that was kind of good. Anything else?
Appreciate that.
Report? Yeah.
Did Ken talk about the whole vaccine? I mean, Ken gave us a great update today on the earlier webinar regarding.
Go pivot back to him then on that, or what do you think? If he's still there?
Yeah, because I think there's, for example, before I let Ken go on, Ken's been really promoting all the EMS systems to get on board with kind of the vaccinations, and the state's done a great job. So we in Coral Springs did a little trial run with the flu vaccination. We had a community-wide flu vaccination, and now all our systems down here are ramped up for COVID. So I'll let Ken talk about that since he's kind of spearheading it.
Yeah. And before I do that, just if you can remind me, but maybe next week, if you can talk about the award the national award that Davie won, Davie Fire Department, where you're the medical director. I want to talk about that. If we get Chris on, I want to talk about Chris's award and then some of the other really great accomplishments of the team here. So that's great. Thanks, Peter. Ken, are you still on, or do you have to get off? Are you still there? Do you want to talk about what Peter alluded to?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to start pre-positioning the Pfizer vaccine soon, even before the EUA is available. So that once the EUA is there, we'll be able to immediately start vaccinating. Peter's absolutely right. EMS is a big component of our mass vaccination strategy for the state, both to vaccinate themselves and also to be used to vaccinate the general population and some of our higher risk populations. So what we developed in our subgroup for the EMS, for the first responders portion, is we developed a sort of a playbook on how to set up one of these drive-through vaccination sites for EMS with a sample incident action plan, the whole business, A to Z, along with some training that comes from the CDC that I just kind of borrowed off from the CDC, put into a slide format. And we're just waiting for that to get approved at the state level, and then we'll send that out statewide. And I suppose once it's approved to be public, we could share it with you all here. Thanks to Terry Sutton from the Broward County Department of Health, and to Charlie Coyle and Sergeant Sowers from Palm Beach County Fire Rescue and Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, respectively, for helping us set all this stuff up. So that's where we're on it. I can't share it yet with community-wide until I get the official thumbs up from the Florida Department of Health. But once we get that, then we can send it out.
Okay, good. And so let's see, there was something like, are you going to be on the call today, I think, right, with John Kramer and me, and hopefully John, right? You got that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, listen, I think this sounds like we've come to the, a good point, a stopping point, I think. There, anything new to report from Fort Worth? I just saw you popping on. So, and then Rob Lowe, I don't know if you want to say anything else beyond what we said last week.
No, we're just doing the same thing, planning for COVID, and then working with some of our hospitals on this Eli Lilly, maybe some in-home infusions, but that's about it.
Okay, good. And Rob Lowe, anything else to add from last week? Yeah, thanks for your help on Blast Americs last week. That was really cool.
Absolutely. No, I'm mirroring my Ohio counterparts, both the community and the departments seeing a spike.
Yeah. All right, got it. Well, good. So it sounds like we covered at least most of the people that are on the line, and we're getting some dwindling numbers. So I think it's time for it was good discussion. I want to thank John Jew again for all the work you put in. And John, if you, I think you're off, or if you're not off, whatever. I just wanted to say if you could do the Sherlock one-pot testing next week, it sounds interesting. So it would be kind of cool if you can plan ahead. Meg, again, thanks for your presentation. It was really good. And of course, the participation of everybody else here today. Overall, just great to keep you guys together. It's really cool to have our social closening here. Appreciate it a lot. All right, so that's good. And then I'm going to seriously think about having a second round of these for some people, but maybe like in the afternoon, for example, on a Thursday or Friday after the early morning meetings, et cetera, that usually go on. And it may be a time when we can capture people that we normally can't get. And even if we run 2 shows a day, Jillian and I are going to try to make that all happen. And again, this presentation, this series that has a CME value of 11942, all right, or 11942 is our code for today, is dedicated to Craig Manifold, who we really miss dearly. So with that, I'll sign off and welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends next week. All right, see you later.
Bye,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
Good
Take
call.
care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.